Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 222.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I am your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today. And here is why. Because there is a necessary skill that many of us as entrepreneurs, we aren't necessarily gifted with. We are gifted in certain little areas that we then want to grow into bigger areas. Occasionally, we find that, maybe you're really good at baking. And then all of a sudden you're like, dude, I wish I could make more cakes for more people and I just can't reach them. Or if you're like me, you do the real estate thing that's hyper local and you're still used to using paper. You're like, oh no, how on earth am I going to reach people outside of my own marketplace? Well, fortunately, with today's technology, there are many, many, many ways to go out there and communicate your message and spread it far and wide and deep. And everybody has these devices in their pocket. In fact, you're probably listening to one or on one right now. The cool thing is, there's a way for you to learn how to reach the person you want for your business and increase your cash flow there. And of course, we are talking today about marketing, specifically digital marketing, using that online thing. And instead of just checking out those cat videos, we're going to help you earn some money. More accurately, today's guest is going to teach you, show you, and educate you on the ways to make that happen. Because here's the cool thing. He's already done that for so many other companies. Today's guest is none other than Tony Delmercado of Hawke Media. And listen to just some of the companies that they've been able to work with. You probably know a name or two. Evite, Bally Total Fitness, Verizon Wireless. In fact, you're probably using their device right now. Bauer, Red Bull, and many other brands. Tony describes himself as a passionately curious dude/entrepreneur, and I absolutely like that because if there's anybody I want to be curious is someone who's helping me spread my message. They need to understand it. They need to understand you. So let's see what we can learn from Tony today. Tony, you there?
I am. Thank you so much for having me. What a great intro.
Thank you. I'm glad that you are taking the time, not only away from the business, but also the clients that you are currently serving. Because at the end of the day, marketing is super important, but yet for some reason, we forget how to do it, Yeah,
it's a little bit of a foreign art. I think sometimes the day-to-day vision of a business can get in the way. There's a lot of really intelligent entrepreneurs and CEOs and business unit managers that marketing just falls off the radar. People tend to get mired in the day-to-day, but it really is mission critical, right?
Right.
Got to get the product out there.
It falls off the radar until someone looks at the sales reports or quarterly profits and goes, hey, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Then we're like, cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you the question that I tend to ask most everybody first. So don't worry, you know the answer. Everyone else knows exactly what's coming here. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs, and of course you are one, a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You got your Superman, you got your Batman, you got Spider-Man, you got all of these people who are, they occasionally get dressed up. Entrepreneurs get dressed up. Occasionally, they use their special skills and unique abilities to save people from their own mess. And I would say in a lot of ways, that's exactly what entrepreneurs do. But just like superheroes have an origin story, so too do entrepreneurs. Before Peter Parker was bit by the spider, he was just kind of a normal guy. So what we want to know is before you were working with, world-renowned clients and going out there to help businesses grow their profits, We want to know who is Tony Delmercado.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think for me, the genesis of entrepreneurship was pretty young, which is also I'm sure not uncommon with some of the guests that you've had. And
Not
that
at
you
all.
talk to.
I'm just wondering if you're going to be the candy seller or the lemonade stand, but I'll let you talk.
Oh, fair enough. Well, lawn mowing actually.
Lawn mowing. There it is. There it is.
So, yeah, so we, I had a great job as a kid. I worked at a golf course. It was my first job ever. I'm from west suburb of Minneapolis called Minnetonka, and growing up there, played hockey. Had a coach that managed a local golf course, which is since been turned into a housing development, unfortunately. But my first job was at a golf course, and I remember raking sand traps and mowing lawns and stuff like that. And thinking, well, geez, this is not a lot of money relative to how much it costs to mow my neighbor's lawn or something along those lines. And so, yeah, I just started with basically my best friend still to this day named Brent Ramsey, who's actually another entrepreneur, runs a software development company in Minneapolis. And he and I just started mowing lawns in the neighborhood. And then a friend's dad was actually a rep for Snapper, a company that made lawnmowers. And I think we got angled in on some zero finance charge deal for young entrepreneurs doing exactly what we were doing. And we ended up developing a pretty neat little outfit with some trucks and some trailers and a whole bunch of commercial mowers and a staff and the whole deal. And that's when we were in high school. And actually were able to sell the business before we went to college, which funded many adventures ever since.
That's adventures in quotation marks, of course.
Of course.
Yes. Stuff to only be talked about over beers, no doubt. Now, I find it interesting, though. I hope everyone else heard that a golf course got turned into a housing development, and that's one of the reasons why we love real estate. I would have never went from golf course to housing development, but that is definitely an interesting play there. I'm curious, though, what led you to what it is that you're doing today? Because not many people, first of all, have a business in high school, let alone sell it to, I'm assuming, help with college expenses. But what was that path from the Tony from college to the Tony today?
Yeah, so I did a lot of different things. I originally went to school to be a teacher for a secondary education, and then this is a sad statement, but I realized how little money they made, and
Right.
I didn't want to be that way. I didn't want to make more as a 16-year-old with a lawn company than I did as a 40-year-old professional in the teaching industry. Which, again, sad state of affairs to be candid, but it's what I originally went to school for. And then after that, decided to go into business. And then as a major, that is, but fell in love with architecture, of all things, moved to Boston to go to a small private school out there and worked at an architectural firm in the North End. Had a similar sort of aha moment where I thought, man, architecture, despite having the entrepreneurial zeal that I did, which was, of course, to have my own firm and design independently and so on, while I was cutting my teeth at a firm in the North End of Boston, I realized there was a lot of really, really smart, talented people in their 50s and 60s that still hadn't been able to cut the cord and make it on their own. It's a starving art, just like any other. And so making a reasonable means to support a family or travel or do some of the things that I'd always wanted to do seemed a little bit out of reach. And so I kind of packed up my stuff and I bought a used undercover police van, which is a very, very long story. But I drove me and all my stuff across the country from Boston to part of California, just north of the San Francisco Bay Area, called Sonoma, Santa Rosa. Most people are familiar with that part of the country. And then I was going to, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I knew that I wanted to be a West Coast architect, so I had moved west. And from there had really no clue. I had worked at restaurants, I'd done some other things, wanted to do something on my own. And then I actually fell into a job interview with a company selling Cutco knives called
Nice.
Vector Marketing, right?
Did you say Vector?
Yep, Vector Marketing.
Yeah. Okay, I'm familiar. Uh-huh.
Yep. And so ended up, going for a job interview and like, yeah, sure, this is different, right? I wanted something entrepreneurial and something on my own, and ended up sort of ascending the ranks of that company and running a fairly significant chunk of business there for just under 5 years. I was at that company. And then in 2009, just decided that although I really liked a lot of what the company was about and a lot of the, I guess, core values, and certainly the entrepreneurial freedom, got to travel a lot, got to set my own schedule, got to manage my own P&L, all these kinds of things that you would expect as an entrepreneur. I just didn't want to do that. Just didn't want to do that anymore. I had a really great gig, but I think, I don't know, maybe I'm not speaking for everyone here, but I think entrepreneurially, I find myself on like a 3 to 5 year cycle. I really have to shake things up pretty dramatically, somewhere around there. And, you know, I'm a builder by nature, I think, as opposed to a sustainer or a closer. I like the building process. So anyway, in 2009, decided that was the time to go. Wanted to get into the nonprofit space, and was fortunate to be introduced by a friend of the family to a man that founded a nonprofit in the early 80s, dedicated to redefining the role of business as a social partner, called the World Business Academy. And this is before, you know, the triple bottom line out of Harvard, like people, planet, profits. And so because of the fact that this thing had been around since the early 80s and had a board of fellows like Deepak Chopra and all these really interesting folks that I had a chance to meet and interact with, but was still very, very savvy in terms of business, right? And sort of capitalistic endeavor. But the nature of the nonprofit was to spread information and sort of ways of thinking and case studies around capitalism and social good not being mutually exclusive, right?
Right.
You can certainly do both. And again, all the sort of founding principles of this place were around long before the stuff that we point to now, which is, I think, really cool. So did that. While I was doing that, was introduced to my current business partner, Eric Huberman, and there was a upstart company selling essentially music online in a way that wasn't incredibly novel, but was doing some interesting things with a side product that they had where they were offering some coaching to musicians, artists, et cetera, to help them grow their careers. There's a long story about the death of A&R in the record industry that I could go into, but probably don't need to. But for the sake of keeping the story short, the company, when I started running it, morphed into one focused on developing the careers of independent artists, helping them find gigs, helping them copyright their songs, helping them get legal entities, and then helping with fan acquisition, which is essentially customer acquisition online in the modern music business. And so got pretty good at that, helped a few hundred different artists achieve the level of success that we benchmarked, which was quit your day job, right?
Right.
And that's, I mean, for anybody out there that is even vaguely familiar with the music business, getting to a point where you can support a decent quality of life with nothing but music is pretty darn challenging in the modern era, right? So that was great. Had a lot of really good wins there. The company, because of the clientele, wasn't able to really make a lot of money. Trying to get starving artists to pay you for a service is somewhat of a bad market niche to try and get after. But so that came to a close right around the end of 2013. And I was actually in Hawaii with my parents and called my buddy Eric up, who I'd worked with on a few projects in between. Ellie's, a women's activewear company, Swag of the Month with a subscription t-shirt company. And we had just always stayed close, and he was working as a marketing consultant and has always had a great network. And I said, well, what should I do next, man? Plug me in somewhere. And I think there's an opportunity for me to impact some business. And he said, well, there's this marketing consulting thing that I'm doing, and we've got this kind of growing list of clients, and maybe we could do that together. And so that was bless you. That was at the beginning of 2014, then January 2014. And that's when Hawke Media started. And so since then, we've been working with a ton of different brands, mostly e-commerce, some B2B, some mobile, but driving revenues, acquiring customers, driving installs, pretty much everything that has to do with data-driven acquisition marketing. We do some brand development, logo guides, style guides, websites, all kinds of fun stuff like that as well. But for the most part, it was born out of a relationship I had with my buddy Eric. So professionally, that's been the windy road that has led me to Santa Monica and a digital marketing agency with 40 some crazy folks like me running around.
Well, let's tell the truth. Santa Monica is just beautiful, and you really wanted to be there.
All right, guilty.
And it seems as though travel is a constant theme for you. So it's interesting to me that you do a significant amount of it, even though you keep change. It's like you'd like to change the scenery and everything that you're doing. You've got lots of breadth of experience when it comes to the world in and of itself. Was that intentional?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've always just really enjoyed new scenes, new people, new culture, new ideas, being exposed to, just different stuff that's out there. It's a pretty darn big world. And I mean, I'm pretty fortunate to have seen a real small percentage of it. I do enjoy it. And I think there's, I don't know that you can ever understand what it's like to live in a community and kind of a scene, a thriving scene right now in the tech space like Santa Monica without going native, right? Without like really immersing yourself in it. And I don't think you can know what it's like to live in an East Coast city by visiting. There's a lot of great things to see in Boston, of course, as a tourist, but I just always wanted to live there. And so there's some places that I've always wanted to, go native. I've always really wanted to just like really, whether, for 6 months or 5 years, I wanted to scope it out. And I've been able to do that definitely on purpose. And I don't know how many more stops are left. There's nowhere else that I keep telling my fiance that I might go to Barcelona for a year. I don't know if she's fired up about that, but that's pretty much the only other one on the list.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know we have some listeners out there in Barcelona. Hey, Billy, because they reach out to us from time to time. I'm sure they would be more than willing to only feed that obsession for you to go there and whatnot. Now, what's interesting, I guess, about all of this is there is this moment. I mean, there's these opportunities that you've had where you've bounced it from working with another company to working on your own and back and forth. And where does that courage to do it that first time or to keep doing it and make those changes come from? Because there are a number of people who I know are listening right now. They want to build their cash flow. They want to start their business, but in the back of their head, they're just going, how do I do that? You seem to have mastered the art of change. That's what I'm going to call it, the art of change, because you keep reinventing and changing yourself over and over again. I'm sure there's at least one person who would love to know, what is Tony's 12-step program to make that work?
Yeah. Well, I think, first and foremost, I have sort of an innate and unwavering belief in the fact that we'll figure it out, right? Again, my fiance, kind of in a mocking way, says we're going to put that on your tombstone, right? Is we'll figure it out. Because that's the thing is, I mean, you could drop me off pretty much anywhere on earth. And I think having a positive attitude and pleasant demeanor and some base level communication skills and humility are also helpful, right? But yeah, I think just sort of a belief in the fact that, there's not that much stuff out there, at least in our very fortunate corner of the world, that is that's all that awful, right? You can get up and take a risk. I've been fortunate as well to have great friends and a good network that I've built over the years by being a solid friend in return, or maybe to start with, and that's why they wanted to help me out, or whatever the situation might be. But yeah, I mean, so step one, just don't worry so much about it. It's not that big of a deal. Life isn't a practice run. It's pretty much the only crack we get at it, from what I understand. So I would say that having the ability to put some fears on the back burner and some confidence and faith, or whatever you want to call it, that things are going to work out. And then, doing everything in your power to generate the success that you want, or the scene that you want. There's tons of tropes about, if you don't like your scene, change it. And that means one of two things: either change the scene you're in, or actually get up and change it. And the other one that comes to mind is the Vince Lombardi quote about luck. That's been one of my things for a long time, is I say that I am lucky, but there's no such thing as luck, according to Vince Lombardi. It's only when preparation meets opportunity, and recognizing when an opportunity is there and having adequate preparation usually means you're a pretty lucky dude, in my case. So I don't know if I could articulate 12 steps very succinctly, but That's the start.
Well, hey, you never know. We might be able to create an ebook right here and start
Right
getting
on.
some opt-in and making it work. So, you
Hey, I'll split it with you, man. That sounds great. Let's do it.
that's kind of where I was coming from. So now all of these things, and the thing that I see, as a business guy, as a real estate guy, when I look at all the things that you've done, it's like no matter the entity or opportunity, there was always this challenge or need to grow a business, to have a business acquire. In some cases, as you said, it was fan acquisition. Others with Cut Code, they just wanted more people selling more knives and more knives sold. Those types of things. Every business entity, organization, I don't care what you call it, has the need to grow. So what I would love to hear is when you look at today's landscape for business owners specifically, is it even a remote, and understand, I'm getting you to say this because there are a number of people who are real estate people, and that's fine. We like real estate people. The challenge is we still use paper, meaning when it comes to getting online and doing things that way, that's not our normal mode of operation, even because we're hyper local in a lot of cases. Can you still foresee a time in your position right now with all the businesses that you've had your hands in and on and around to where a legitimate business can actually ignore online or having an online presence or online digital marketing in any way, shape, or form?
No, no. Yeah, for sure. No. I don't think there's anybody around, even those that are fairly, resistant to change. I can't imagine someone saying that they don't need rather an online presence of some kind, whether that's, simply providing some content around the local market conditions as a real estate, professional in the area, or as an investor or developer, whatever it might be, or it's a restaurant or a service industry or a plumber, or certainly having the cognizance to leverage the existing digital platforms that are out there. If you're not aware of your reputation on Yelp or Google or things like this, then that's somewhat damning. If someone's squatting on your Twitter handle or a Facebook page, I'm not saying that those are necessary for every single type of business that's out there, but certainly a web presence, given the tools today like Squarespace and Shopify and WordPress and stuff, there's really no reason other than just being oppositional to not being online, right? And sorry if I bugged any of your listeners by saying so, but yeah, there's no reason not to do it.
Well, I kind of did that on purpose because I run into this a lot. For a number of years, I operated with absolutely no website. Most people know this. We went from 0 to over 300 units, no websites, none of those things. We just went from step to step, customer, person to person, investor to investor, on our own, just talking to people in the local market area. But there came this point where we wanted to be bigger than just our local market area, and we started learning, and I started learning all these other things. And today, when I approach new investors, one of the things that I'm helping people with, and in fact we're doing right now, is a digital marketing mastermind that teaches people, here are some of the basic things you need to be doing so that you can grow. You say you want investors. Well, they're on Facebook, believe it or not. You want to be able to move, more product, more sales, more commission, more whatever. There's a way to do it online, and you need to tap into that. Yes, the house is down the street, but the person who's going to buy the house, even though they live next door, is probably starting online. And I just think it's a necessary skill in so many different ways. Here's what I'd like to know. Why do you think so many entrepreneurs have a challenge growing their business, or more importantly, assigning proper recognition and weight towards actually learning marketing at all?
Man, that's a pretty good question. I don't know why it's so challenging for entrepreneurs to develop marketing chops or learn new skills, period, for that matter. I think you highlighted at the top one of the traits that I guess I'm sort of proud of, or that I'm glad I've cultivated over the years, which is this passionate curiosity, which of course leads to skill development. Right.
Right.
Hear a word that I don't understand, see a platform I haven't heard about, and if there are things out there, not that by no means am I the sage of anything. I just happen to be curious enough to get educated and be able to hold my own in a conversation around a variety of topics. And so for me, I've been fortunate that that's there. But I'll tell you, in the hiring process, it's one of the things that I really look for in candidates that are coming here, is that desire to learn more and to better themselves, especially in this industry. Real estate or some brick and mortar businesses might not be so dynamic in terms of changing on a dime the way digital acquisition might. But I think having some wherewithal and some skill development it's super important. There's a guy who does a podcast that I heard a long time ago named Mark Schuster, who's a venture capitalist here in town. And he said, if you're not doing everything you can every single day to be better, there's some kid at Stanford right now sleeping on a couch eating ramen who's going to kick your ass,
and he's probably on his second bag of ramen and a can of Monster, right? Or no, not Monster, Red Bull, right?
Right.
So at the same time, that's go ahead.
I don't know why it's hard though. Yeah, I mean, what I don't know is that why entrepreneurs sometimes, I think if you get a couple wins early, and I don't mean this to be dismissive or negative around anybody, but if you get some entrepreneurial wins early or put a little money in your pocket, I think it's easy. Again, not easy. I don't want to overstate this. It's possible to get complacent and think you know everything. I know a lot of really, really smart guys that have had a lot of really great success, but they haven't innovated or redefined themselves or maybe gone to a different place mentally or professionally to try and sharpen the saw, and I don't know, maybe that's part of it, but to try and define why people are lazy or don't put the energy needed into marketing or sharpening their skills in an environment where you can really get some good returns on the marketing capital that you throw out there. I don't know. That doesn't sound like a very smart business person to me.
Well, and the thing that I'm learning, especially from the real estate, traditional real estate guy turned online marketing, like let's figure this thing out because I get to see these returns firsthand, is just how important it has now become, how central it is to the real estate business to have this presence in so many different ways. One of the things that I appreciate, and I'm just curious to get your perspective, is if we were to try any of the things that we do today to reach the number of people that we can, it would be astronomical in cost as well as just developing that platform. Whereas today, it feels like I need a cell phone and a selfie stick, and I'm ready to go just about anywhere. I would love to hear your thoughts on the barrier to entry. Like, really, how difficult is it for a business to develop a marketing presence online? Now, just like I know, that it seems like everybody's got a website, and sometimes you could say, well, everybody but me, Jay. And he's going to definitely answer the question and give you his insight into how easy it is. But here's the point, here's the question, here's the thing I want to ask you. What business are you in? Now, I'm going to ask it again. What business are you in? No matter what you answered, at some point, you're really in the sales and marketing game, and you're trying to grow your customer base. You're trying to get in front of more people. You're trying to market your services to more people on a bigger, better, badder, wider scale. That's what you're in. And you've got to learn these skill sets and make these things happen. So hopefully you're paying attention to everything that Tony is putting down. Pick it up and make sure that you are taking copious notes. If you want to get a hand on some of my notes that have helped me to develop a 10-step system that you could read all about in my book, Cash Flow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy, just text the word book, B-O-O-K, to 72,000, that's 72000, or go to cashflowdiary.com/free book. I'll send you a PDF copy because you podcast listeners rock. And if you really, really want to, you can just go to Amazon or Audible and buy it. But I would say, why don't you just go ahead and go to cashflowdiary.com/free book. Get started today. It's enough of me. Let's get back to Tony so you can hear what I think you're going to like when it comes to the barrier to entry.
Yeah, great question. And I'll circle back to something from the music business experience that I had, just because I think it's interesting. What happens in the music, what happened in the music business is, because of the MP3 and easy distribution and home recording studios and low cost digital instruments and so on, what we saw happen there was the business became so easy to get into. Everybody and their brother's a DJ, like everybody's got
right.
something they're singing into a Pro Tools thing that costs $300. I mean, you think about how expensive that was even 15 years earlier. It's profound, right? So what happened is the walls come down, you democratize the business, but now the professionals, the real legitimate musicians that have been, out there doing it, they're competing for the same ears that somebody who picked up a guitar yesterday is. Now, what I would suggest is that in a profession like real estate, or any other for that matter, the barriers to entry, to answer your question, have come down tremendously. I mean, you can literally go on Squarespace. I'm not plugging them. I hope they're a sponsor, or if some competitor is, you can delete that. But you can go on their platform with no credit card for 30 days. You can build a website. If you dig it, you pay them $10 or something. I mean, it's amazing, right? Getting an advertising somewhere like Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, even now, is open to the general public. These are things that are incredibly easy to do. The challenge now, that I will say, is that you've got everybody and their brother, much like what happened in the music industry, competing for the same attention. And so perhaps some less reputable people in the field of real estate are competing for the same business or opportunities that those folks that really do the right thing and have established the right skills and credibility are doing as well, which leads to my second point, which is, yes, the barriers have come down, but doing it right and giving yourself some sort of reputational credibility online is uber critical now that everybody's out there.
Well, and you're bringing up the point. It's not like, yes, it's easy for anybody to do, and to some point, the guy who's learning to play music, if he just records the fact as his journey on learning to play music, he actually stands a chance at outperforming the person who actually knows what they're doing musically, which is crazy to think about. But at the same time, one of the things that I'm learning is just how they all interact with one another. I mean, we recently got on Twitter, and I'm just like, wow, this is a pretty neat platform. Had completely dismissed it for a long time. We had been in podcasting and YouTube and all these other places, but Twitter was just not on the radar at all. And I'm just like, wow, this happens everywhere. It's like every platform has so much to offer any particular business or entrepreneur. So I'm kind of curious if you have a favorite, what I call traffic store. That's what I tend to look at each platform, where there's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. They're just traffic stores. Is there a particular strategy that you guys like? Is there a particular traffic store that you're fond of? Like, what is your go-to playbook that you would say for most entrepreneurs?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can give everybody pretty much the fundamental philosophy that I have around marketing online, which is, if you think of a pyramid, right, or Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, at the bottom you've got food, shelter, water, etc. You move up through social acceptance and self-actualization up at the tip, right? Yes. I think everybody has a visual on this, right? So if you think about the base, right, it's good product, good brand, good website, right? Those are first and foremost, right? Without those things, you can't really move forward. Then my favorite traffic store, if you will, is your existing traffic. So the next step up on the pyramid, I would say, is retargeting and email marketing. And so unless you're capturing a meaningful percentage of your traffic in email, providing some value, of course, whether that's a white paper, a free consultation, a discount, what have you, getting emails so that you can maintain a dialogue with customers and nurture them through to whatever acquisition you're looking for, as well as retargeting, right? Dropping a pixel on your website so that you can show that visitor a display message or a Facebook message. Those two things are always the lowest hanging fruit with most of the businesses that I come across. Either they're not being done at all or they're not being done well. And then if you move up from there, I would say that's when we get into traffic acquisition, right? So to answer the question of what my favorite store is, I think that it's probably for the lion's share of our clients, because they're e-commerce focused, it's probably Facebook. It's easy to show nice, pretty pictures of products to people and they click on them. And then if you have the previous two steps that I mentioned built out well, now you've got a solid mousetrap. So when someone does come to the site, you're going to be able to nurture them through to a transaction. If it's a B2B client, it might be something more content driven, content strategy where you're producing a lot of great content, much like this podcast, or white papers or topical think pieces that are then used to sort of begin that dialogue again with a potential customer or partner that you nurture through that process.
Well, you brought up something that I'm actually glad you did. I have an article on the blog that talks about relationships are built, not bought, and oftentimes the expectation from the entrepreneur is, okay, I've got a website, and now where do I just go find the people who are going to buy today? And you keep mentioning this nurture process. So could you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're on the same team here, man. We can do this podcast again. I was going to have to get angry. No, I'm just kidding. I would never. But I think that there's way too often people get really short-sighted, frankly, about traffic acquisition. Let's say best case scenario, you're a really, really strong converting website selling cool shoes, right? I can tell you, if you're converting 3% of your traffic to a sale, that's phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
So what happens to the other 97%? Are we just, you're telling me for every $100 I spend, I'm only getting 3 back, and I'm just fine with throwing the other 97 in the trash? That's insane, right? So I look at traffic in much the same way, where when someone comes to the website, they've expressed interest in some way, shape, or form. So let's give them an opportunity to continue that dialogue, whether that's through email or whether that's through remarketing on display or on Facebook. Facebook's a utility now. I think for a long time it was perceived as, oh, it's a social network. You can't drive any business there. It's a utility. It's just like the water company. People are there all the time. There's 25% more advertisers on Facebook today than there were a year ago, which is staggering because there was a lot a year ago. But there's these really competitive spaces. So as it becomes more expensive, more costly, more challenging, more competitive to add traffic, we have to nurture these customers through to that conversion. So that could be through email marketing is the easiest, and automated email marketing we find to be really effective. So what you're doing is crafting a user experience based on that person's behavior. Maybe if they visit a certain page on your website, you send them a specific kind of message or a specific kind of content. If they open that, then we're probably going to feed them some more content or some more kind of dialogue that makes sense relative to what their journey is. If they don't open the first 3 emails I send them, they're disengaged. I've tried everything I can. Well, now I might want to win them back and say, hey, what happened? You came here. It seemed like something you were interested in, and now you're not. Did I make you angry? What's going on, right? And really thinking through how you're emailing people based on their behaviors. A lot of if this, then that kind of statements, as opposed to the batch and blast, what I think is our mentality of like, here's our newsletter that we do arbitrarily because it's Tuesday. And look, we're guilty of some of this stuff too. At Hawke Media, we put out a newsletter every other week because that's what people are used to. But it still makes me cringe a little bit when we do it, right?
Exactly. But this is the thing. The thing I'm enjoying about this is you're just really tailoring a relationship building process done through automation, done through using online techniques, as opposed to just picking up. I mean, previously, we would just go meet people in person and talk to them. And that's how it worked. And based upon their behavior, like you just said, the conversation would change. And you're just saying, here's a way to do it online.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a multitude of ways to do it online that are still authentic, right? I think authenticity is something that's important. If you're just BSing people and sending them a 20% coupon and then a 25% coupon and a 30% coupon. Consumers are savvy, right? I mean, people know what's going on these days. And so I think having some level of authenticity ties into that base of the pyramid I referenced earlier, which is about some brand, right? You got to have a good product, got to have a good website, you got to have some good brand. And that has to do with how you communicate. And then just to finish off that piece, the tip of that pyramid I would refer to as social proof. So if you have some PR, if you have some third-party validation, whether that's from reviews or testimonials or case studies, that stuff is gold. And then you can pepper that into the dialogue as well. So those customers that are sitting on the fence or people that might not convert to whatever you're trying to get them to convert to, send them some third-party evidence and remind them, like, hey, the same way you would when you pick up the phone. I get how you feel like maybe this isn't the right thing for you right now. In fact, Chris felt the exact same way, but what he found was, it was a pretty good partnership, or there's a pretty good product or whatever. And you can do a ton of what you would normally do on the phone or in person through some intelligently designed email marketing automation and retargeting. And again, just kind of the whole thing. But yeah, obviously I'm enthusiastic about it. It's what I do every day. But there's a lot out there in the digital marketing space.
And just so that we don't have any, because I recently have delved deeper into the whole retargeting, remarketing space. For those who may not understand even what something like that is, could you kind of explain?
Sure. Yeah. So the basics of retargeting or remarketing, there's a couple third-party providers that will do it. Most notably, AdRoll and Steelhouse, I think, are the big ones. But you can also go directly through the display networks, like the Google Display Network is probably the most popular, or Facebook. And what you will do on either of those platforms is they'll give you a little script, or what sometimes is referred to as a pixel. And a little script is just a little block of code. It's probably 12, 15 lines of code, nothing crazy. You drop that into your website. If you use a WordPress or a GoDaddy product or a Squarespace product or anything out there that's third-party, off-the-shelf, easy, they'll have instructions for it. And you just take that little piece of code, you drop it into the back end of your website. And then what will happen is that will drop what's called a cookie, right, on every browser of a user that comes to your site. Now, users can turn off cookies and you're not doing anything crazy. It's all very, very ubiquitous in the internet today. In fact, look at most websites, there's dozens of cookies, right? So anyway, once you drop that cookie, now Facebook or Google knows that you've been on, let's call it Hawke Media, right? So if you go to Hawke Media right now and you see my website, what will happen is that if next time you log into Facebook, I might show you an ad. You might see an ad for Hawke Media and you'll go, man, how did they know I was on their website?
You were looking over my shoulder through the window.
That's right. It's the whole thing. And don't worry, there's nothing personalized about it. I think sometimes people have a little bit of a big brother fear, especially when it comes to retargeting. It feels weird sometimes to people, but I can tell you it is ubiquitous. It is 100% everywhere, all the time, and there's no personal information gathering or anything like that. The only people that actually know who you are is Facebook and Google. So I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse, but
no doubt, they know. Between those two, I wonder if they could get together and they could probably predict what I'm going to eat tomorrow.
Guaranteed. Yeah, they're amazing.
So with all of these services and things, I'm assuming this can be, for anyone listening this far, I'm going to say that their brain is possibly exploding and maybe even feeling a little bit overwhelmed. What I really would love for you to share is some of the ways that you help entrepreneurs assimilate all of this new stuff into their existing business processes that ultimately result in more leads, sales, and transactions, or in our case, definitely investors, more houses, more property, just more of what it is that we're out there to do.
Yeah, well, for us at Hawke, we've always taken the approach sort of stemming from the brand side or the entrepreneur side, right? It's an agency which often gets referred to as the dark side, right? You go talk to somebody who's a director of digital marketing at a large company and let's say, oh, agencies, XYZ. We've always come from the side that is there to serve entrepreneurs and brands. That's why we're a month-to-month agency. We don't have any long-term contracts or anything like that. All of our services are a la carte. Someone wants to use us for Facebook marketing, but not email marketing, fine. It doesn't bother us. And the way that we approach everything is we do a pretty in-depth kickoff with every client that we work with, where we'll sort of assess and take a temperature on where things are as far as the business, where are the biggest holes in the bucket, where can we really make some improvements with low-hanging fruit, and then we'll typically execute on that fairly quickly. And then there's a process of both execution and education. There's a lot out there. I got to tell you, I'm not the smartest guy under the roof in my own office about most of this stuff. And we've got a team of about 40 that are working on this all the time in a bunch of different disciplines. And the reason we've got 5 silos in our business is because it's really complicated. There's a lot of moving pieces. The whole nature of digital attribution is flawed. It's an imperfect science, but we know enough to impart some of that wisdom on everybody that we work with. And we take a pretty consultative approach with the folks that we work with to generate more sales, more leads, et cetera. Again, if it sounds corny, but if I can reference that pyramid or that hierarchy, that's really the approach that we take with virtually everyone. Certainly when we're doing some diligence up front, is let's make sure that the product's solid, the brand's solid, the website's solid, and make tweaks to improve all those things, and then make sure that we've got a good mousetrap built. Make sure we're doing well with traffic acquisition, and we're buying traffic efficiently, and we're buying traffic from the right places, and then let's drum up some social proof, get some bloggers fired up, get some PR, get some reviews, those kinds of things, and that's pretty much it from a high level. I could certainly dive in on any of those if you want, but
well, the thing is that I think would be helpful is for everyone to hear, when of all the entrepreneurs that eventually approach you, what is the top 3 things that they haven't done, so that someone listening can go, oh, that's me. That's what he's talking about. And because how do they recognize, you know what, I need somebody?
Yeah, I mean, well, in a lot of cases, they just don't know their numbers, right? I come from a business ethos that says everything you do at the end of the day should fit in a box on an Excel sheet, right? And if professionally, that is, by the way, I'm not talking about playing with your kids or hanging with your friends, right?
We're not going to go that deep yet.
Not that deep. Yeah. But from a professional standpoint, what are the metrics, right? What are the core metrics that drive your business? What are the things that you need? I have found very, very few people are really dialed in when it comes to knowing their numbers, whether that's using something like Google Analytics or RJ Metrics or Domo or one of these really expensive platforms on the higher end, knowing what traffic looks like, what percentage of that is new, which landing pages they're going to, what's average time on site, what content's on that site. What do you think is driving those results? And what can we do to impact those numbers that we care about? Maybe we don't care about time on site, but we care about a conversion event, whether it's a form submit or a certain length of video that somebody has watched. And are we measuring that? And if not, what the hell are you doing, right? Because you're flying a plane at night with no instruments, right? It doesn't make any sense to me. So I would say that's first and foremost. And I guarantee a big chunk of the people listening to this don't know their numbers cold in that way, right? That's the first one. The second one, I would say, is automated email marketing. And I think that is where people fall in love, fall in lust with Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest, and now there's Periscope and Meerkat and Snapchat ads, and there's all these great things that people get real fired up about that are flavor of the month in a lot of regards. Email marketing's been around a long time. I use the same email address that I had 15 years ago. And if I give that to you, we've now entered into a sacred dialogue, right?
Right. And protected at all costs.
And so if I've been, as a brand, given that opportunity to communicate with a client or a potential customer or a potential partner, whatever it might be, and I don't take that advantage, or worse still, I'm not even giving them the opportunity to engage me in that dialogue, that's a huge mistake, and it's super common. There's big companies that we've worked with, and very successful companies that most people wouldn't have heard of, but are really financially successful, that are just awful in both email capture and automated email marketing. So that's another one that I would say. And by the way, that doesn't matter if you're a B2B business, if you're a B2C business, if you're a brick and mortar, if you're a mobile company,
plumber.
You pick it.
It doesn't matter.
Marketing information well enough, right? Probably. I shouldn't say that with such a sweeping, generalized tone, but I'm guessing it's probably not done with like, first class sophistication, which not everybody necessarily can afford or has the resources to do. But that's a big, big opportunity for a lot of businesses. Even a simple, email capture and welcome to my list response is a great start for a lot of people, right? And then retargeting. I mean, that one is just so huge because your ad dollar goes so much further with someone who already had one impression.
I know. Okay, you just said something that got me all kinds of excited because I've been looking at our numbers and difference in terms of what it costs to get that first person to have an impression or a visit to the site versus getting that person to come back. I'm just like, this is ridiculous. It makes no sense whatsoever and gets me too excited all the time. Now, before I get too excited and distracted, for those that have listened this far, there's probably at least one person who said, you know what? I just want Tony to do this for me. How can they check you? How can they track you down, stalk you, figure out what's their next step?
Yeah, hawkemedia.com. There's a free consultation link. We've got a really solid staff of biz dev people over here that would be more than happy to take a call with you and tell you where there's some opportunity. If nothing else, you'll learn something from the call. I'm not trying to strangle anybody into coming and being a Hawke client, but there's definitely some value we can add in 20, 30 minutes on the phone with one of our biz dev guys. There's usually something that we can point out and some actionable advice that we can give. And then if we end up, working together, awesome. Then we have a pretty rocking team over here that's able to build businesses. And, what I always say, just as a quick, credibility note, is we're a month-to-month agency that's been around for 2 years and been profitable since day one, scaled from 2 people to over 40. So obviously we know what we're doing. Otherwise we'd get fired a lot.
Yeah. And that works for me for sure. Now, for those that are listening and still wondering, I would love for your thoughts on this. Because many people, if they have a nationwide something, they can go, oh yeah, I need to be online. Can you talk to the person who's local? Because a lot of the listeners, I know they're doing local. Maybe it's local in, the UK, local in Germany. And I know you guys are listening. Hey, how you doing? But I talk to that local. Does this still apply to them?
Totally. Yeah, 100%. And shout out to the overseas contingent. That's awesome that you guys have some international listeners. I think that oftentimes where we've seen incredibly low CPMs and CPC, like impressions, right? So for those not familiar with the lingo, the cost per 1,000 impressions, it's cheaper to advertise oftentimes in other countries besides the States on the most popular platforms. And therefore, with the same percentage of click-throughs or the same efficacy of an advertisement, you're essentially getting traffic to your website for cheaper. And we work with businesses here, fortunate to be involved in a East Coast transplant called Tasty Delight. Anybody on the East Coast probably knows who they are. Super awesome. They just opened up here in Santa Monica, or actually the opening party, I think, is this week, something like that. Anyway, we did a ton of work with them that was literally in 2 zip codes, right?
Nice.
And it was awesome, right? I mean, I think that they're going to have a pretty fruitful launch and a long history here. So there's tons of stuff that you can do locally. Oftentimes, it's just like anything else. If you want a national audience, you got to have a national budget. If you want to reach a local audience, you probably only need a local budget. And there's great stuff in every platform that you can do with targeting that's either specific to a niche or specific to a geography or specific to just about anything. I mean, it's, again, for those people that get weirded out by this kind of stuff, there's an alarming amount of information out there that you can target as an advertiser. So geography is pretty easy in that sense.
Right? I think we should do a campaign targeting moms who eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches only on the weekend. How about that?
No problem.
No doubt. Well, one of the things that I want to ask you before we go is there's a ton of entrepreneurs listening, ton of would-be entrepreneurs, ton of people who are still stuck in their job, and I think they're still stuck because they just don't have enough leads and sales. Obviously, that's something that you can help with, but there's this other thing going on in the back of their head. They want to be the superhero. They want to become that entrepreneur. They want to go and pick out their tights and their cape and their mask and start serving people, but they still have that voice in the back of their head, Tony, and I know you know the voice I'm talking about. You've dealt with it. You've overcome it. You slay it day in, day out. Yet, some still have not managed to do so. So what I would love to hear is, to the person who right now is still dealing with that voice in their back of the head and hasn't planted their flag in the sand, saying, here is what we are going to do and how we're going to get it done and who we serve, but they're still dealing with that voice. What would you have to say to them right now?
In all seriousness, it sounds really cliche, but what have you got to lose, right? There really isn't anything that's inhibiting you. If you're in a relationship, there's a strong likelihood the person that decided to hang their hat with you is supportive. There's
You hope.
Yeah, you hope, right? Fingers crossed. It might not be universally true, but I think that there's just the risk threshold, as you pointed out earlier, is so low. The barriers to entry are so low to really just like get out there and carve something out on your own. And I think if it's something that you think about frequently enough to where it's this splinter in your mind, then that's really all you need as far as motivation to say, hey, look, this is a persistent complaint. This is something that I know I need to break away from. I want to forge out on my own. And, if you need an excuse to pull the trigger again, I think probably every day there's an expression. I don't know who I got it from, but this is, life is not a practice run. This isn't a warm up for something, right? If you're not working on your best idea right now, you're wasting time.
Well, I, for one, am very, very grateful for the information that you've been able to share with us. Like I said, you've dropped a lot of knowledge, and hopefully those of you, maybe the kids were running around, you were able to still pick up what he was putting down. And most importantly, if you were, washing those dishes, you were still able to understand and take some notes. And if you were on that treadmill, you were able to still run alongside these great ideas that were just shared with you. So I, for one, sir, just want to say thank you for taking the time to invest your knowledge with us here at the Cashflow Diary.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm excited for your audience to hear this stuff, and email me anytime. Tony at hawkemedia.com. Happy to respond in any way that I can. I definitely like helping people. I've gotten a lot of help along the way as well. So thanks for having me. It's been great.
Quite welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? It probably means get over to hawkemedia.com. It means email Tony. It means do something. Never leave the scene of a decision without taking measurable action towards it. So what does that translate to? That means take out your phone, go to Hawke Media right now, click the free consultation button, and get started. At least you will be in the process. They're going to contact you back. What are you going to do? You're going to pick up the phone and you're going to be on your way to more leads, more sales, more business, more of what it is you said you wanted. And here's the cool thing. They're going to help you get it. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.